She said, okay, I'd like to welcome everybody to the Village of Woodbury Zoning Board of Appeals meeting. We meet the second Wednesday of every month. We've had them in Zoom. The next meeting is July 13th. Might very well be in person. Looks like it might be that way. We'll see. Let's stand for the pledge to the flag, even though I don't have a flag. Craig, do you have a flag? No? Okay. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Okay, so this is the Village Zoning Board of Appeals meeting. If you're looking for another meeting, you're in the wrong spot. I'd like to first introduce our board. I'm going to go by my screen. I don't know what your screen looks like. So when I call your name, if you could just raise your hand so the public knows who you are. We have Mr. Andrew Zumas. And we have Mr. Ed De Jesus. Did I say that correctly? Hopefully.
Yes, you did.
And we have Mr. Craig Brady. And we have Rachel Bruce. And I'm Karen Ungerer. We have our counsel this evening is Kelly Naughton. And we have our recording secretary, Jessica McLennan. Okay, let's begin. Looking at the agenda, we have no executive session. Has everyone read the minutes from May 11th? Do I have a motion to, it looks like everybody's muted except me and Ed.
I'll make a
Craig.
motion to accept the minutes as presented.
Do I have a
I will
second?
second.
I'll second.
Okay, any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay, we have no new business, but we do have some action on decisions. The first decision is for Beer World, review decision requesting variances from section 310-32B to exceed the square footage for a retail establishment. Section 310-30D2, small letter D, attachment 11 of chapter 310 to allow additional wall signage area in excess of what is permitted. Said property is located in the LC zoning district at 159 State Route 32 in Central Valley, is known on the Village of Woodbury tax maps as section 226, block 1, lot 9.2. And we do have a decision. It's several pages of facts and findings. Just want to make sure I got the right one here. And our decision is as follows. As a consequence of the board's discussions, the Zoning Board of Appeals hereby denies the requested area variance described and discussed above. Do I have a motion to accept?
Just
to
so the
Vote
board
on.
knows, it would be also for, as you could see on the top of page 3, it's also to issue a negative declaration in accordance with SECRA. So whatever motion you make, if you could also include to issue a negative declaration.
Okay, so the motion should not only include the decision, but the negative declaration on SECRA. Do I have a motion for that? Craig?
I'll make the
Do I have a
motion.
second?
Second.
Rachel?
I
Yes,
did not,
aye.
I did, so I did not, I was scratching my nose. I did not make the motion.
Oh, okay, I'm sorry.
Oh, I'll make the motion then.
Okay.
I'll make the
And
motion then.
who would like to second it? Anyone? I'll second it. Okay. How do you vote? Andrew?
I vote aye.
Okay. Rachel?
Aye.
Craig?
I vote aye.
Ed?
Abstain.
Okay. And I vote aye. So the decision stands as written. Okay. Next action on decision is Clark, review decision requesting a variance for the construction of a solid 6-foot fence in the side yard. Whereas pursuant to section 146-5, letter B, no fence shall be more than 4 feet in height in any side yard. And pursuant to section 146-7, letter A, no fence shall be erected in a front yard in a residential district or along a public right of way unless the fence is uniformly less than 50% solid. Said property is located in the R1A zoning district at 8 Ridge Road in Highland Mills and is known on the Village of Woodbury tax maps as section 202, block 1, lot 17.8 Ridge Road, 17.8 Ridge Road. And we also have several pages of facts and findings. Decision is as follows. As a consequence of the board's discussions, the Zoning Board of Appeals hereby grants the requested area variances described and discussed above to the extent noted above, and hereby finds that the variances as granted are the minimum variances necessary to preserve and protect the character of the neighborhood. Prior to any building permit or certificate of compliance being issued for the fence, a proper owner authorization form must be submitted to the building department. As per A 316-9 of the Village Code, this decision shall expire if a building permit is not obtained by the applicant within 180 days from the date of this decision. The board may extend this time for one additional period of 90 days if such extension is warranted by the particular circumstances. Do I have a motion from the board to
I'll make the motion.
Rachel? Okay. And do I have a second? Okay, I'll second it. How do you vote, Craig?
I'll vote aye.
Okay. Rachel?
I vote aye.
Okay. Oops. Ed?
Abstain.
Okay. Andrew?
Aye.
Okay. And I vote aye. So Mr. Clark will have his fence. Okay, next on the agenda is public hearings. The first one is Aponte, continuation of a public hearing requesting a variance for the construction of a 6-foot fence in the side yard. Whereas pursuant to section 146-5B, no fence shall be more than 4 feet in height in any side yard. Said property is located in the R2A zoning district at 10 Sequoia Trail in Highland Mills and is known on the Village of Woodbury tax maps as section 247, block 3, lot 9. Is Mr. Aponte here? I see you. Okay, so this is the third time we're meeting on this. The first time somehow you disappeared. Second time.
Lost a little bit of reception, wasn't coming in so clear at home, so I had to cut it off.
All right. Are we
Second time.
clear? Are we clear this evening?
Yes, we are.
Okay. All right. All right. So what you're doing is you're seeking relief from the requirement that the 6-foot fence, you would like the 6-foot fence in your front side yard. Whereas a
correct.
4-foot and it's solid, and we're 4-foot semi-solid is what is required or what is in the zoning law. Now you put in a building permit in 2020 for the pool and the fence. So I imagine it took a while to get that done because here we are in 2022.
Yes. Yes.
And you said that the purpose is to conceal the air conditioner and pool equipment.
Conceal yes. Also, so the dynamic of my neighborhood has changed dramatically, and so there's a concern with some privacy as well.
Okay. All right. Comments from the board? Anyone? Well, I've driven by the property. The first time I drove by, I said, uh-oh. I think he's gonna need to come before us. But I'm not the zoning board police, so
Right.
I didn't say anything.
Okay.
I looked at your diagram of the
Okay.
yard with the fence, and I
Yes.
looked at what the air conditioner and pool equipment area is. And I'm
Yes.
wondering why you didn't just put a 4-foot fence or even just a 6-foot. I mean, around In other words, around the front of the house, make the fence, and then parallel to the air conditioner and pool equipment, and then along the rear of the property where you could have 6 feet. Is there a reason you didn't do that?
Say that once again. I didn't clearly understand.
Okay, so the front of your house is facing Sequoia.
Right?
On the left is the fence in question,
Yes,
correct? Okay.
yes,
And in your diagram, you have the pool equipment and air conditioner or whatever is there, that equipment that's there. And you
Right.
wish to hide that. So you could have put a 4-foot fence from the front of the house and just go around that pool equipment. And then when you get to the rear of the property, rear of the house, you could do your 6-foot across. Is there a reason that you didn't do that?
At the time, it was just impossible to get fence parts, and it took forever for that fence to come in. And so it would have been another year to actually change the fencing altogether, how you explained. So we didn't want to really bark up that alley. So we just left it as is. That's the reason why we chose to do it that.
Did you have, I don't find it in here in the, your building permit, the request. Did you ask for a 6-foot fence and then it was approved, or because it just says here, in-ground pool, 20 by 80-foot fence?
So that was, 6-foot fence was what we had originally planned to use and to provide in the back of the house. So I'm assuming that was what you guys understood it to be around the perimeter of the home.
Did anyone explain to you that you should have had a 4-foot fence in the front and side?
The inspector came out and explained that to me. Prior to that, I did not know.
Oh, in other words, so after the fence was erected is when you found out about the 4-foot?
Yes.
All right. Comments from the board? Questions? Nobody? My concern is just, you've got that, it's quite a distance. I mean, for me, it looks like quite a distance from the side of the house to the property line and back.
It's probably 15 feet. 15 feet.
Yeah, well, here they have from the house to the property line is 48.3 feet, they have it. So I would think it'd be more than 15 feet. On the
48.
diagram that you have there, that was submitted here, it shows from the corner of the front of the house to the property line is 48.3 feet, right here. Is that
I don't know
correct?
how to annotate, but right here is where she's saying
Yeah,
it.
you can't see mine.
Oh,
I'm moving my
I
arrow up
shared
and down.
mine, so hopefully everybody
Oh,
can
so
see.
48 feet from the front of the house to the back of the house is what is that what we're looking at there?
No, we're looking at from the side of the house
There.
to where she has circled.
Right?
Okay, it says
Yep.
48.3 feet. So I'm assuming, I don't know if this is to scale or whatever with this equipment here, but I think, and I've seen the fence, it's more than 15, I think it's more than 15 feet. My question is, I don't know if you understand it, Kelly, where you could draw on it, why you didn't put 4 here, go back to the rear, and then where the red line is, just do your 6-foot fence here, because that would be in compliance, this part. And probably 4 foot, even if it was semi-solid, would be okay. Well, that's the code, but if it was solid, would probably be less of a variance needed.
So like,
Yeah, I understand, but with COVID,
Oh,
just
yeah,
didn't
that's right.
be available the way that it needed to be. Like I said, what's also the dynamic of my my neighborhood has changed. You know, people walk by my home and they're watching us go in the pool and watching every move we make. Well, my family's not comfortable with that. So we chose
Where-
to,
Where is the pool located exactly?
the pool is behind the house, but with a 4-foot fence and that much of property exposed, you can see my whole backyard.
No, you can put 6 foot from the back. You would still have a 6-foot fence. The only portion that we're concerned about now is the front area.
Karen,
side.
I think he's describing situation with people walking on Sequoia Trail, and a 4-foot fence does not provide the privacy that he's
Thank
seeking to the backyard. It's not about people in the backyard looking into the pool. It's the fact that people walking by on Sequoia Trail would be able to see the pool.
But it would still have a 6-foot fence in the rear. I don't understand.
And that has nothing to do with visibility from Sequoia Trail. Line of sight from Sequoia Trail, he's saying he needs a 6-foot fence for privacy.
In the front.
That's correct, from standing on Sequoia Trail. Am I getting that right, Mr. Aponte?
Yes, 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 yes. Thank you.
Okay, okay, well, I didn't get out and walk. I just drove by.
Right.
I don't really know what the line of sight is. And I certainly did walk on the property to see the pool or whatever. Any other comments from the board? Rachel, did you have your hand up? Is that
did, yes.
Is that a little hand?
That's a little hand, yes.
Okay.
Which, yeah, no, thank you. So, whatchamacallit, Mr. Pond, I understand your concern about wanting privacy, and it's, it's annoying when, people are walking by and you're just trying to enjoy the pool. And, granted, the board will discuss tonight ways to, I guess, alleviate the situation, but has your family considered maybe planting trees, maybe evergreen trees? Sometimes that can be.
We've planted trees, we've done everything. I mean, I'm surrounded, so, and all this costs a lot of money. I've already,
Of course.
it's already done. I've already spent way too much money above just looking for the privacy that we need to remain in the home. So it's
Okay.
challenging.
Thank you.
Each day is challenging for us.
Anyone else?
Hey, can you take me through the process? So you applied for the permit and the permit showed a 4-foot fence. And then when the inspector came, they noticed that it was, how did that whole process, did you do that? Did the contract, how did that whole process work?
Yeah,
No,
that
it was
my concern.
filed as a 6-foot fence, but it was so the equipment was exposed, and then we had noticed in the line of sight that the 4-foot, that the 6-foot fence where it should be, it wasn't good enough, that we had to extend it out further towards the front of the house. That's when that came into play.
Got it. And did you just not know that was not to code or how?
I didn't know. It's funny that I didn't know. It's ironic that I didn't know, and then it worked out to where 4-foot fence wasn't good enough anyway for us. It just was. It wasn't doing what we needed it to do.
Does that answer your question, Andrew?
Yes, thank you very much.
Thank you, Andrew.
Anyone else have anything? Any questions, concerns, comments? All right, I will open it up to the public. Is there anyone from the public who wishes to speak to this application? Greg, you're not the public.
My name is John Taylor.
Okay,
I think that, from listening to everything, I think that he should be able to have a fence and privacy. We do pay a lot of money to live in this town, and it is only right that he should. And I don't know the reason why a fence would be an issue in the neighborhood.
now the issue is just the height of the fence, according to the zoning code.
Yeah, but if 6 foot to 4 foot, what would that do? Like, what's the reason?
we don't really get into the intent of the law.
A fence is a fence. I mean, what's the point of a 4-foot fence? If everyone can walk by and stare and look.
Yeah, yes,
To a 6-foot fence. So what are we doing? I mean, what's the reason? I
right.
mean, why is there a code or between 2 feet we're talking? You know, most people are over 5 feet tall, so 4-foot fence is useless in a sense.
Any other comments from the public?
I don't mean to tag. I know you get tagged. Okay.
Are you going to show us the fence, Mr. Aponte? Or are you just taking a hike outside?
No, I'm not even at home. I'm not at home.
And that
not
right
at
there
home.
is the benefit of virtual meetings.
That's right.
right.
That's right. I'm not at home, and I'm just kind of working and doing my job for today. That's why.
Okay. Craig, did you have something to say?
No,
Okay. Anyone else?
Madam
Anything,
Chair, I'd like to make a motion to close public comment.
any,
second,
okay. Do you want to close the public hearing? Was that your motion?
Yes. close the
Okay,
public hearing.
gotcha. All right, and Craig, you seconded it?
yes,
You weren't scratching your nose?
no,
Okay. Okay. All in favor?
aye,
Okay. All right, so we will discuss this at the end of the meeting. You can stay online, or you can call the building department in the morning and find out what the story is. It's up to you. You're on mute, Mr. Aponte.
Because I'm not part of my own home. I'm out. I would have to probably call tomorrow morning. I would
Okay.
greatly appreciate if you guys consider my concern and the dynamic of my, my neighborhood and why we chose to go ahead and do what we did with the fence. No other reasons besides privacy.
Okay,
Not to obstruct or to go against building code or anything of that nature. Just to to be private and feel safe in our home. That's all.
So
okay,
just so you know, Mr. Aponte, when we consider this, our charge, if you will, is to consider it as if the fence was not there. So as if it were a request to build the fence. So that's how we have to look at it. I'm just making you aware of that.
That tells me that doesn't sound so good, but okay.
No, it's if you were to come to us and say, I want this fence for privacy, that's what you're saying, whether the fence is there or not. We can't take into account that the fence has been built.
Oh yes. Yeah. Oh, that's no problem. That's no problem. I
Yes.
completely understand that. 100%. I completely
Yes.
understand.
Good, thank you.
Yeah. No problem. That's totally fine. Okay, great. Thank you guys. Appreciate it. Enjoy your
All right.
evening for your time.
thank you.
Take care. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Hey, Madam Chair, before you move on, Mr. Clark came on late after we had already voted for his decision, so we might want to let him know about the vote so he can go home.
I hope it's nice news. I'm sorry
This is Beer
doing-
World?
No.
No,
David-
this was Clark. Mr.
Yeah.
Clark, you did
Oh,
receive
Mr.
a
Clark.
decision in your
Oh,
favor.
yeah, we voted unanimously to give you your fence.
Hey, thank you so much. Well, all right. I really appreciate it. Thank you,
Okay.
everyone.
All righty.
You have a
Good
great
luck.
night, everyone. Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
For some reason, I thought you gave me another name. Sorry about that. All right, next on the agenda, public hearing is Southside Oil / Dunkin' Donuts public hearing, requesting an interpretation of sections 310-2 and 310-7, and whether adding a drive-through to the existing Dunkin' Donuts is permitted. Said property is located in the LC zoning district at 124 Route 32 in Central Valley, and is known on the Village of Woodbury tax maps as section 226, block 1, lot 80. Is the applicant present?
Yes, Madam Chairperson, I'm here. My name is John First. The attorney for the applicant. I'm an attorney at Catania Man and Ryder in Newburgh, New York. Also with me tonight is Jeffrey Stewart. He's a representative from Southpaw and Dunkin' Donuts.
Okay. So what we have here is the applicant is Southpaw, but the owner is Southside Oil. We have an
Correct.
affidavit from David Pinella that says that they give permission for the law firm of Catania, Mahan and Ryder, PLLC, to represent them in any proceedings regarding the application requesting an interpretation of this zoning code, correct?
Correct. And I'd be
Okay.
happy to go through the application and summarize it for the board if it's okay with you.
Yeah, we can do that. I was just going to do that. Before you do that, though, I would like to say that we did get some information from the planning board, who I guess you went before first, correct?
Correct. Mhm.
And they had some concerns as to whether the existing Dunkin' Donuts is permitted, because I don't know if they were considering fast food or what. They were also concerned with the general operation and the circulation of things at that site, the gas station, the storage, the U-Haul, etc. They had traffic concerns, which are there now, both vehicular and pedestrian. And they just wanted to know what the bulk criteria for a fast food restaurant was, if in fact this goes through, I guess. So what we're here tonight is for us to decide whether the building inspector's decision or opinion, interpretation, is that Dunkin' Donuts is a fast food restaurant, whereas the applicant is holding that it is a retail establishment. We will go through the definitions and whatever. I know that the applicant submitted lots of documents from 1994 up to 2012. Retail is mentioned in just about every one, but it doesn't say Dunkin' Donuts retail, it just says retail. However, certificate of occupancies were issued. Building permits were issued. In 2012, I saw Dunkin' Donuts on the thing, on the paperwork. That's the first time I saw Dunkin' Donuts other than retail. And there it didn't say retail, just said Dunkin' Donuts for interior renovations. The applicant is saying that all these years it's been retail, nothing's changed, therefore it should remain retail. Whereas the building inspector says, well, it did change from a place to get coffee and a donut, and now you can get sandwiches and wraps, and they're prepared on site and they're made all day. And he quoted the definition of a restaurant, which any establishment whose principal business is the sale of foods, frozen desserts, or beverages to the customer in a ready-to-consume state, usually served in paper, plastic, or other disposable containers for consumption within the restaurant building, elsewhere on the premises, or for carry-out for consumption off the premises. And the applicant gave the definition for retail, and the important part is at the end of it, which says establishments which sell prepared sandwiches or other food with no table service for consumption mainly off the premises, but who may have up to 14 seats, will be considered retail for the purposes of this chapter. So we have two different definitions. I don't know if it's going to come down to semantics, but let's hear what you got to say.
Sure, thank you. I think the issue really is whether the existing Dunkin' Donuts and the proposed drive-through for that Dunkin' Donuts is a retail use. I don't think the issue is whether it's one or the other. I think the issue is whether it falls under the definition of retail use. In the LC zone, retail uses are permitted. As you had noted, there was a special use permit issued for retail use gas station back in 1994. There have been many building permits and certificate of occupancies issued for retail stores, retail businesses throughout the 90s. Dunkin' Donuts took over the space around 1997. Subsequent to that, there were still building permits and certificate of occupancies that were issued, but there was nothing in relation to, nothing was required with respect to any change of use. It was already determined that it was still a retail use, and as you noted in the definition of retail use, it does allow businesses to sell food, sandwiches, and the like, just like what Dunkin' Donuts has been doing. They've been selling sandwiches and other foods for a while. And certainly the sales have increased, but just because the sales have increased, the definition of retail does not limit the amount of sales of food for those retail businesses. So this is a use that's been going on since 1997. It's always been categorized as a retail use. It's by the building department. It meets the definition of retail use. Again, I'll read the section. It talks about establishments that sell prepared sandwiches or other foods with no table service for consumption, mainly off premises, will be considered retail. So that's what Dunkin' Donuts has been doing, and that's what Dunkin' Donuts will continue to be doing, even with the drive-through. In addition, if you look at the supplemental regulations for retail uses within the LC zone, I think it's section 31020. It does contemplate retail uses that serve sandwiches and other foods. So again, the fact that sandwiches are served does not preclude this from being a retail use. And in addition, any increased sale of sandwiches doesn't transform this into something other than what it has always been, which is a retail use. Likewise, adding the drive-through will not change anything. It still meets the definition of retail. There's no prohibition. And certainly other commercial uses have drive-throughs like banks and pharmacies. So there's no reason why this specific retail use can't have a drive-through. So, in sum, I don't think it's really an issue of whether it's one or the other. I think the question here is whether this Dunkin' Donuts falls under the definition of retail use. And we feel like it does based upon the clear language in the definition in the code, as well as the building department's prior historical treatment of the Dunkin' Donuts.
Hey, Mr. First?
Yes.
In the beginning, you said it doesn't have to be one or the other, which I agree. But just because it is commercial use, could it also be considered a fast food establishment? I'm looking at Village Code definition for drive-in or fast food. And it says any establishment whose principal business is the sale of foods, frozen desserts, or beverages to the customer in a ready-to-consume state, usually served in paper, plastic, or other disposable containers for consumption within the restaurant building, elsewhere on the premises, or for carry out for consumption off the premises. So while it doesn't have to be one or the other, certainly a fast food restaurant would be considered, commercial use. But while it doesn't necessarily have to be one or the other, it could very well be defined as a fast food restaurant the way I'm reading it.
It sounds like you're saying it could potentially be both.
Could I?
I mean, and that's an ambiguity in the code, and any ambiguity has to be resolved in favor of the applicant, of the property owner, because then if that's the case, then you've got the same use. It's permitted and it's not permitted depending on the definition. And if the definitions are so similar, that
So
creates
Kelly-
an ambiguity.
Kelly,
Well,
can you
I just
please
want to
clarify-
say that John is saying that it's ambiguous, but the board may not find it ambiguous. So if
But
you
Kelly,
don't think it's ambiguous, you don't need to follow that line.
My question is this: isn't there an exclusion in the LC that says no fast food? Thereby, it is not ambiguous. It's saying that fast food cannot be in LC.
You mean,
But
well,
retail uses are permitted in LC, and retail uses do permit the sale of sandwiches and food. So is it permitted, is it not permitted? That's, I think, where the ambiguity comes up.
So I
interesting.
think the answer to that is what the code provides is that retail uses are permitted in the LC district. It does not permit fast food restaurants.
The Dunkin' Donuts website describes Dunkin' Donuts as a quick service restaurant, which doesn't help us at all.
I literally just looked at the same thing to see what it said on the website, because not that it should matter for these purposes, of course, but you know, it doesn't
Yeah,
help,
It's called
unfortunately.
a quick service restaurant. There's over 11,300 of them worldwide. And it belongs to the Inspire Brands family of restaurants. That's on the website, not in our code.
So Kelly, fast food is not permitted in LC zoning, correct? There's no
Correct.
ambiguity there, correct?
Correct. Well,
Correct that that fast food restaurants are not permitted in the LC district.
any
I
other
just have a
comments?
question. I'm not sure. Oh, sorry.
No, go ahead.
Sure. No, I just had a quick question. I don't know if this should influence anything, but have we considered looking potentially at the makeup of the menu and see just how many of their offerings are bagels and donuts versus actual sandwiches? Because
Doesn't
to my
really-
knowledge, doesn't really help.
No, it doesn't really matter. Well,
Okay.
according to the building inspector, it does matter that they've added the sandwiches and wraps.
Just
But
for
it
point of
doesn't-
clarification, I think they've always had sandwiches and wraps. Jeff, can you maybe speak to that?
Absolutely. Certainly, as long as I've been associated with Dunkin' Donuts, which is early 2000s, there have been sandwiches, wraps. At one point, there was pizza. When we remodeled and renovated this space back in 2012, we were remodeling it to its current state, which in the plans that were submitted and approved, specifically called out a sandwich station in the plans. And so I guess it has been this, we've had this same, not exactly the same mix. It changes over time as the brand, Dunkin' Brands, brings in limited time offerings, things like that to try and drive business. But the fundamental nature of the business has always been coffee, baked goods, and then as we do 12%, 13% of our business is in sandwiches, breakfast sandwiches. So it hasn't really ever risen above that, and continues to be essentially the same business since we've been there.
The same website says in 2013, they decided to add some sandwiches, which were not breakfast sandwiches. They were probably lunch or dinner, barbecue chicken, bacon ranch chicken. And they have all day menu items. So it's not just breakfast. Just to clarify that.
Well, we have since then gone away from chicken sandwiches, ham sandwiches, turkey sandwiches. It is all breakfast items now. We do have snacking items, snacking bacon. We have brownies and things like that. But we no longer prepare fried chicken sandwiches.
I think whatchamacallit, I think that there is an offering, but there's like a grilled cheese on the menu now, and not that that should really count for anything. That might just be one option, but to me that sort of falls more into the lunch dinner category. I know I've had it for lunch several times. It was delicious, but
And again, we have things that come and go, like we have an avocado toast at this point. We don't really have any control over the menu items per se, but the fundamental nature of the business has not changed. And we, as I mentioned, when we submitted our plans for the remodel, specifically called out on those plans are a sandwich station designed to prepare sandwiches, which was approved by the town.
Right, and again, if you read the definition of retail business, it doesn't really matter what the menu is, because establishments would sell prepared sandwiches or other food with no table service for consumption mainly off the premises, but who may have up to 14 seats, will be considered retail for the purposes of this chapter. So what the different menu options, whether they're sandwiches, breakfast sandwiches, lunch sandwiches, it doesn't matter. As a retail business, they are allowed to serve sandwiches. That's right in your code.
Right, but
And
there is an explanation in our code as to what a fast food restaurant is. And in LC, fast food restaurants are not permitted. So, and I understand, Mr. Stewart, what you're saying, that you submitted plans that show us a sandwich station. But what we're here to decide tonight is, my understanding is the determination made by the building inspector that this is a fast food establishment. Is that correct?
We have to decide if he's correct or if the applicant is correct.
Okay. So, I mean, in terms of the decision of to put a sandwich station in or the remodel, I don't know that that's pertinent to the conversation here this evening.
I'm sorry.
Oh, it could be, because if it wasn't an issue 10 years ago, why is it an issue now? If 10 years ago, when the building inspector saw a proposal for a sandwich station, he didn't go, oops, wait a second, this is now a fast food. That issue never came up. But now 10 years later, now it is an issue.
I think Mr.
That to me tells me the historical use has been retail.
I think, Mr. First, the addition of a drive-through, it changes that dynamic. I think, it clearly changes the dynamic. The adding of a drive-through, I think, in my opinion, changes the dynamic.
You're not according to your code, though. Your code doesn't have any prohibition against drive-throughs. There's drive-throughs for pharmacies, there's drive-throughs for other commercial uses. The code doesn't have any restriction on drive-throughs. And then I don't think fast food, the definition of itself, it says drive-in or fast food. So I guess technically you can have a fast food without a drive-in. That's how I read it.
Right, but we're talking about this specific case and the establishment of 2012 remodel of a Dunkin' Donuts versus the addition of a drive-through, which I understand that you can have a pharmacy with a drive-through, but I don't think that a pharmacy with a drive-through could be misconstrued as a fast food restaurant, which is not allowed in the LC zone. But I think a Dunkin' Donuts with a drive-through.
Well, I think there's an issue then, because if a use meets two definitions and one of them's not permitted and one of them is, you've got an ambiguity.
Just
The issue
historically,
here is whether this is fast food or drive-through. The issue here is, whether this is fast food or retail. The issue here is, does it fall under the retail use, which is how it's been historically categorized.
and just to add something to the conversation about, what has occurred in this space, in the convenience store located right next to us, there was for several years a Subway located in there that presumably was approved by the town at the time that it went in. And I don't know how we would, Subway is all about sandwiches. That's essentially all they sell, sandwiches and potato chips.
But again, as a retail business, you're allowed to sell sandwiches. which is how that whole space
Correct.
has been categorized.
Correct.
I don't mean to sound like a broken record, but you know, I really think the issue here is this a retail use? And under your code, I think it clearly is.
I think the
I mean,
issue could also be if it's a fast food restaurant, it's not permitted in LC. So just because something is retail use, if it is fast food and is not permitted in LC, I don't think that that's ambiguous.
Well, it is.
In my understanding.
You've got very similar definitions, and one is permitted in the LC and one is not permitted in the LC. So what
Mr. First,
is
Mr.
somebody
First.
supposed to do?
Wait,
Rachel?
if we could just
Oh.
hold on for 1 second, I think we need to focus on what, I know John is saying what he believes the issue is before this board, but what the issue actually is before this board is an appeal of the building inspector determination. Specifically, the building inspector interpreted that, and I'm going to quote it so everybody has it, that his interpretation on this application is that on its own, not by creating a drive-through, Dunkin' Donuts is considered fast food as defined within the code. He set forth what fast food is. So that is what is being appealed to the ZBA, and you are determining whether or not that determination is accurate and is correct.
May I ask a question just for clarification purposes? If the board chooses to align with the building inspector's interpretation, does that mean then that we need to close down our business?
That is something I would say that you would need to talk to your attorney about. Sorry, John. We couldn't give you advice to that, and this board's not going to look into.
But I think it would be, that seems like it would be part of the discussion of, you know, how this is viewed, since in the past, this has been an allowed use. Nobody has said anything to us up until this point about
That's true.
operating our business there. We've been there for, I mean, I've been there since 2011, and nobody has said a word. We've invested money in this space. We have provided jobs. We've provided tax revenue. And now we're being presented with possibly the argument saying, well, sorry, you got to close. Because it's not.
One thing that I apologize, sorry.
Go ahead, Rachel.
Sure. No, just one thing I just wanted to bring up is that when you look at the two different definitions, you have Mr. First's definition, which focuses on the retail side, as we all know. So establishments which sell prepared sandwiches or other food with no table service for consumption mainly off the premises, versus the building inspector's definition, who states that any establishment whose quote principal business is the sale of foods, frozen desserts, beverages, and a ready to consume state, etc. I think that one thing to consider is that when you compare this against the convenience store next door, like, yes, they may have had a Subway for a number of years, and yes, they sell potato chips and soda, but they also sell car parts. And I don't think that Dunkin' Donuts sells anything aside from, you know, bagels and food, aside from, you know, coffee cups maybe. And usually those are novelty items. So I just want to kind of put that out there for people to consider.
And one thing I would just like to add is, and I'm sure that John would tell you, based on what a building inspector has done in the past, doesn't necessarily guide this board. If a building inspector, and there are cases on this, has issued a building permit for a building 25 years ago and it was issued improperly, it can be overturned. I'm not saying that in a way that would impact this application. I'm just saying that so you understand where this board, what this board is looking at, where this board is going. And they're limited to, this is the interpretation of the board. They now have to take those factors and interpret them as they see how the pieces should fall.
Understood.
Rachel, you still have your hand up? Did you need to say something else?
Oh, no, I apologize. I forgot to put it down. Thank you.
Okay. Any other comments from the board before I open it up to the public? Craig?
I mean, I guess my first question is, what was, did the Dunkin' Donuts and the remodeling of what used to be Sunoco gas station into a mobile with a convenience store, and then Dunkin' Donuts came in, could have been concomitantly, might have been a little bit later. Did that precede the creation of the LC district, or was the LC district already in existence?
It was in existence. I checked with the building department.
Okay. So it would be reasonable to assume that having gotten a building permit at the time for what Dunkin' Donuts was doing at the time, that it fit the definition. One could make that as a reasonable assumption. I would make that as a reasonable assumption. Would make the same reasonable assumption that, I'll pause there for a second. I think that by any definition, a fast food restaurant is a retail establishment, period. It is a subset of retail establishments. Further, if various things online, fast food and quick service restaurants are basically synonyms. Additionally, in a listing of the top 25 fast food quick service restaurants, Dunkin' Donuts is number 6. So by any definition you choose to make as a reasonable person, if you walk up to a guy on the street and say, is Dunkin' Donuts fast food restaurant? I would say 90% of the people would say yes. Now, whether that sways anyone on this discussion or not may or may not be relevant. But what I'm looking at is essentially thinking that this is a pre-existing non-conforming use, potentially, which does not necessarily prevent that use from continuing, but it would prevent that use from expansion. Kelly, is that reasonably accurate, or does that not come into play?
Well, I can't comment on whether or not, I can comment that your statements are accurate statements generally, as far
That's
as
fine.
this.
That's all you have to say.
Okay, I haven't looked down that avenue, so Karen knew more than I did about when the LC district came to be. Obviously, the village, I know, was created in 2006 because we helped create it. And we also helped convert the town's law over, but I feel like that was a long time ago, and I just can't remember what the code said back then. So I didn't look at it from that perspective. So I just don't want to weigh in on the factual accuracy of those statements.
And do we know if the LC district existed as it exists today, excluding fast food restaurants in 2012? Is that something we can determine?
We can look it up. I didn't look it up. I just didn't look it up.
I didn't look up that. I didn't look it up. I asked the building department whether back in the 90s, if that was an LC district or not. They said, yes, it was same zoning.
Yeah.
So I don't know if
district hadn't
definitions
changed.
changed or,
There were 2 amendments to the LC district. I know that from looking at the village code. What those amendments contained, what the prior version of the laws were for the code for LC, I don't have access to, so that might be an avenue to look at to get clarity around this.
any other comments from the board? Questions?
I have just one question for John. Your memo to the board stated that you believe that they started operating out of around 1997, but you didn't say that directly. Do you actually know when Dunkin' Donuts started operating there? And do you have any
Sometime
proof of
in
that?
around 1997. We don't have an exact date.
You don't have a
Maybe
date for when you signed a
96.
lease with a tenant or anything?
1998. I don't think the same company owned it at that time.
Yeah, that's prior to our ownership.
Okay. When did you take ownership?
2011.
2011, okay.
Anyone else from the board? Kelly, anything else right now? Is there anyone from the public who would like to comment on this application?
Hi, my name is Lisa Bosley. I'm one of the neighbors across the street from the Dunkin' Donuts, and nothing against Dunkin' Donuts. I enjoy going there, but I do want to say that I did talk to my neighbors. 4 of them are on this call right now, and we are opposed to having a drive-through implemented. We think it's very unsafe, and I just wanted to make a note of that.
Thank you. Anyone else to speak to this application?
Hi, my name is Mackenzie Montagaza. I'm one of the neighbors across the street as well. I've lived here pretty much my entire life and have seen that property across the street cause more accidents and more injuries than I think the town wants to see. And I think adding more traffic to this area is probably not wise, not to mention that there's a drive-through Dunkin' Donuts less than a mile away. So I think that's something that needs to be considered, that, you know, fast food restaurant or not, regardless of what Dunkin' Donuts puts on their website as far as a restaurant, is, you know, there's something just as close for all of these people that need to purchase their product on the go, fast food, retail, whatever you want to call it. But I think it comes down to the safety of the public and the town. You know, the zoning codes are in there for a reason, and I think that needs to be evaluated.
Thank you. Denise Montagaza, did I say that right?
Yes, yes, you did. How are you this evening? Yes, I live across the street from the Dunkin' Donuts. I've been here for 38 years. Prior to the Dunkin' Donuts, it was a cute little Sunoco station with Charlie, who used to take care of the gas station. Since it's developed into a bigger business, and everybody should do well with business. I was a business owner as well once. I just think that, as Mackenzie has said, who's my daughter, living across the street, I hear screeching and cars ramming up, and I've had 5 accidents land up in my front yard, taking my fence down, 5 trees, and hurting people, and nearly killing one of our dogs because of people trying to get out of the different exits and getting into different entrances of the Dunkin' Donuts so that they can purchase their product. I think everybody should, you know, make money in their business. I don't begrudge anybody that, but a drive-through in this area right here would just hurt somebody terribly. The other day we had pedestrians walking across the street in the crosswalk. People are jamming on their brakes and jackknifing up onto the sidewalk. I was pleased when we had finally redone Route 32 and we put a big curb on there, because I felt like, gee, now nobody will pass on the right when you're making a stop to try to make a turn to either get into the Dunkin' Donuts or for me to try to get into my driveway. People still pass on the right. The other day, we had 2 accidents outside that somebody rammed each other in the butt because they were trying to make a turn and nobody was cautious enough to be able to slow down. We have a 45-mile-an-hour speed limit in front of my home. Why, I don't understand, is 30 further down. We have people who walk up and down Route 32, children, women with strollers who walk with their children to go get, at one time, ice cream or cross over to Dunkin' Donuts to get an ice cream cone. It's not safe here. It isn't safe. If it's 45 that's posted, you have to know that they're doing 55. I hear them race up and down the highway continually. It's not good. Even when my children were getting on school buses, I couldn't have them get in front of our house to be picked up because people would pass on the right-hand side trying to get around. There is no patience anymore for people who are driving. They have a point to get from A to B in a certain amount of time. It's sad because we don't respect each other. And I'm afraid that there's going to be a terrible accident. When it's fatal, then maybe somebody will do something about it. But putting in a drive-through at this time, no. It's not, it'll never work. It'll just, like I said, I don't begrudge the man making any money and he could do whatever he wants, but a drive-through here would be a terrible, terrible thing. And another light would be even worse by far, because all they'll do is race through it. And I mean, I could probably put a camera outside and show you on a daily basis what I watch from my window, or I can hear. Every time I hear a thump or a creak, I run to the window to see who it is, or do I need to call 911? It's a terrible way to live, to have to worry about people in your front yard all the time, you know? You never know if I open the door or go to get my mail, you know, am I going to be hit by a car? You can't mow your grass without watching the highway because of people turning in and out of your mobile station. It's a fact. Can't plant anything outside because you can't not watch with your back all the time. So yeah, I think it would only make it worse than it already is. Like I said, I'm very sorry. Like I said, I don't begrudge your business. I think it's wonderful that you make money, but a drive-through would just be the worst thing ever here. And you know, I will do everything I can to oppose it. I'm very sorry, but it's not safe. And if you lived here where I live and you had children, you would feel the same way. And that's all I have to say. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else from the public? No? Any more comments from the board or questions? Does the applicant wish to add anything?
Not at this time. I mean, we might want to address some of the comments. Perhaps we could, make a supplemental submission or something like that if you want to keep the public hearing open.
Well,
So I would like to keep the public hearing open because I would like to ask the building department if they could clarify did LC exclude fast food? Let's get a clear definition on that, and let's allow the applicant to respond to the comments as well.
okay, my concern with responding to the comments is we're not here to decide whether a drive-through is good or bad. It's to decide whether the building inspector made a correct interpretation.
I agree. Part of the issue that's before you is his appeal. And like Craig mentioned earlier about the pre-existing non-conforming use, right now, that's not any argument that has even been presented to the building department. So I just want to make sure it doesn't go off track. And so for the applicant, if they want to submit any responses, it would be, should remain focused on the issue that's before the board. And I just don't want it to go off track.
I know I did ask the building department what the dugout was. They said pre-existing non-conforming. I don't know how long it's been there, but I know it's been there a long, long time.
At least since the 1960s, I think.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Yeah.
And I don't know what the zoning was then. Any other comments, questions, concerns? Do I have a motion to keep the public hearing open as Andrew suggested? Oh, Kelly, do you want to say something?
Yes, I was just trying to pull up the calendar so you can do it to a date certain. Do you usually have?
I actually didn't make that motion.
No, I know,
Okay.
you suggested.
So based on what council said, I did not make that motion.
If the board does want to keep the public hearing open at the applicant's request, it would be your July 13th meeting.
Correct. Does the applicant wish to keep the public hearing open or the board?
I have no objections. There's some comments that I think we'd like to address in the interim. So yes, please.
Okay, do we
I'll
have,
make the motion to keep the public hearing open.
I second that motion.
all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay, so we'll see you in July.
John, if you can just try and get your submission in by the end of June. Usually we ask for it 2 weeks in advance at least. So that would be June 29th if you're able to submit by then.
Okay,
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
thank you.
Okay. That's it on our agenda. No building inspectors report, no nothing. So we do have deliberations on the closed public hearing for a punt.
Ponte.
Yep. Okay, All right. As Craig said, we have to look at this as if the fence is not there, as if he's applying for a brand new fence. Correct, Kelly? Okay,
I think let's just go through the 5 factors
Yeah,
and,
that's-
yeah, we'll figure it out.
okay. Okay, so the first question, will the granting of this variance produce an undesirable change in the character of the neighborhood or create a detriment to nearby properties? The applicant says no. It's an extension of the existing fence of about 10 feet, which doesn't interfere with anything on or near property. Well, I think it's more than 10 feet, but have you driven by? Have people driven by?
I've driven by and I would agree. I mean, it's not, it conforms. I would agree with the applicant.
Anyone else?
I would agree with the applicant as well. I drove by and I would agree.
I drove by several times because I have friends in that development. Well, of course, the first time I drove by, I said, uh-oh. And the second time I drove by, I looked at it again. I think I would have done the fence a little differently because it's, you know, kind of cockeyed with the terrain, but if the line of sight is not good for 4 feet, then I guess the 6 feet is okay, you know, with me. What do you think, Ed and Rachel?
It makes sense to me that with the line of sight issue, that it should be around 6 feet.
I would agree.
Okay, so we agree with the applicant on this one. Number 2, can the benefit you seek be achieved by some other feasible method other than the variance? He says no. The fence keeps property equipment hidden and allows an elegant look to the home and area. Well,
So-
go ahead, Rachel.
Sure. No, I will say like, so that was, so I asked the applicant, as you all know, during the discussion before, if he had considered planting trees or any kind of vegetation. And he said that he had already had, and he seemed to be pretty against doing it again. Me personally, I think that the same thing could be achieved with the 4-foot fence plus, you know, evergreen trees. But I think that the applicant seems to be pretty against it.
While it could be achieved in another way. It doesn't necessarily preclude the applicant from getting his variance.
Oh, true. You know, I mean, I see a different way that it could have been done. You know, I don't know about the line of sight. I don't know. I'm trying to picture probably a 4-foot fence. You know, I'm thinking, I don't know, 6 foot in the back, and I don't know. I don't know about the line of sight. I didn't.
You know, Karen, the one thing, there's an air conditioner too. It wasn't just the pool equipment.
Right.
You know, the air conditioner is there already. So, you know, we could have said they could have put it in the backyard, but he wanted to kind of fence in the air conditioner as well.
Right. Well,
So,
I thought he could just go around it and put the 6 foot in the back.
yeah.
I thought it
mean,
would
he
have looked
could have.
nicer too, because the other side of the house has it on the back. You know, I thought it would have just looked nicer, but if it's for the privacy is what he said, you know. So are we agreeing with the applicant? Well, we're kind of split on that.
No, I mean, I agree with Rachel. There are other ways
Yes.
that he could have accomplished it. But again, that doesn't preclude him from being eligible
Right.
for variance.
Okay. Number 3, how substantial is the variance you are requesting? He says it will be in harmony with the general purpose of the zoning requirements. He didn't really answer that question. Well, it's 6 foot over 4 foot. I think, you know, the way the property there, it said 48 something feet. I don't know if that's accurate. And he's got 6 foot going across. So I think and then he's got the side of the house that's 6 foot. So I think to me, it's fairly substantial. Numerically.
I would agree that it's substantial numerically. The distance going to the edge of his yard and the distance, whatever the depth of his home is, I would agree with you that it's substantial, yes.
Anyone disagree? Okay.
I have
number-
mixed feelings.
I'm going to say that I'm of two minds by virtue of the fact that it's a third, right? It's 33%, 4 to 6.
Is that including side and front or whatever we call it, side?
I'm
know.
looking at the height of the fence. The variance is 4 to 6 feet, so it's 2/3. It's 32. It's 33%, regardless of distance.
Say that again?
Regardless of distance, the length of the fence, it's 33%. It's a height variance of 2 feet, 4
Right,
feet to 6 feet, regardless of how long it is.
oh, I see what you're saying, okay. Just to me that since it should be 4 feet semi-solid from the, where he has it, two sides of it, to me that was numerically large.
I don't disagree with that comment. The 50% solid, et cetera. That's why I'm of two minds.
Yeah, okay. Anyone else have thoughts on that? No? Number 4. Wait a minute. Oh, yeah. Number 4, will the granting of the variance have an adverse effect or impact on the physical or environmental conditions in the neighborhood or district? The applicant says no, as mentioned above, variance will contribute to the beauty of the home. I don't think it has an adverse effect.
I don't think so
The
either.
neighborhood.
Yeah, the
Or-
neighborhood's
or-
beautiful, the house is
Neither do
beautiful. I
I.
agree.
Or the environmental conditions. I don't see any issues there.
No.
Number 5, is the alleged difficulty self-created? He says no. The requested variance has not been self-created and will not alter the essential character of the neighborhood. Well, I think we're going to disagree on that one. It's self-created because you want something that's outside the zoning code.
Hey,
But,
so I agree with you on that, Karen. While it definitely was self-created, again, that doesn't preclude him from getting.
Right.
And I'll just say, I mean, while there was a different way that it could have been done to run, just a little fence around the equipment and then running the 6-foot high fence across the back. I don't have a problem with this requested variance. It fits in the neighborhood. It doesn't look bad. So personally, I think it's okay.
Should we make a motion here?
I
I'll
mean,
make a
before,
motion. Oh, sorry.
no, I was
Go
gonna
ahead.
say before we make a motion, just, I just wanted to put that out there and make sure it was, it was good with everybody.
Did you
I'm
wanna
in
say
general,
something, Oh, go
sorry.
ahead, Craig.
no,
No,
I'm
go
in
ahead.
general, agreement with what you said, Andrew. I don't think that it's a significant issue here, and there were certainly no public comments, no neighbors protesting, et cetera. And, other circumstances, maybe not identical or similar, we have granted similar variances. So, given some of the factors that Mr. Aponte brought up, I'm okay with it.
Anybody else? Do I have a motion then to?
So I'll make the
make
motion
the motion.
to request.
And I had it
council-
all written down.
Oh,
Oh,
sorry.
then let Karen do
Go
it.
ahead. No,
No.
go ahead, Craig. I
No,
want to
you
see if I
have it
did it
written
Karen
right.
can have it.
Karen. Give it a rip, Karen.
Karen, you
Okay.
got it.
Do I have a motion to authorize council to draw up a draft decision consistent with our discussion this evening? Did I leave anything out? All right. I'll
That
make
was
that motion.
2 thumbs up right there.
I'll make that motion. Do I have a
Second.
second? Okay, thanks, Andrew. All in favor?
Aye.
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 Okay, so looks like a favorable decision for Mr. Aponte and his family.
Madam Chair, I make a motion to adjourn this meeting.
Oh, I'll second that. Looks like next month's gonna be in person, huh? Unless something weird comes up.
Yeah, that right now it expires on June 14th. So unless it's extended, we have to go back in person.
Wow.
Wait, I have a quick question.
Mhm.
Oh, sorry. No, I know the village just passed. Did they just pass? I think that they actually passed it. The whatchamacallit, the law allowing for teleconferencing. But does that apply to the zoning board?
So I think you weren't here by the last time I got on my little soapbox about this. But that law does not do what the legislature, I think, intended for it to do. So unless you have extraordinary circumstances, you don't have the ability to video conference in. It's permitted in extraordinary circumstances. That resolution saying what those extraordinary circumstances are has not yet been adopted by the Board of Trustees. But the statute itself that was enacted by the legislature as part of their budget law or whatever, does set forth certain examples of what that is. So it's like severe illness, things where you probably wouldn't be attending the meeting anyway, unless it was desperate need for a vote. You should be attending in person. The majority of the board needs to be in person in one location.
Got it.
So-
No, I understand. No, thank you for clarifying. I just wasn't sure how that kind of trickled down
No,
to the other
it's
boards.
a good question. And I got on my little ZBA soapbox about it last meeting or the meeting before, I think. Craig is like, oh God, don't get her started.
No, it was-
Still recording.
I enjoyed that soapbox immensely. I really did.
Thank you.
So I'll make a